Welcome to the Let's Go Recovery podcast, where we investigate sobriety and beyond that, explore solutions to help us heal at the core, where the root of our problems like addiction or alcoholism begin. We hope you hear something in today's podcast that ignites a change in your life. Oftentimes on our show, you've heard me say something like, I hope that stopping drinking alcohol or doing drugs isn't the worst decision you've ever made in your life. With that in mind, I have a special guest on the show today. I'm here with Ellie St. Aubin of Dry in the Desert. Super excited to have you on the show. We connected on social media, and I read some of what you posted. It's certainly in line with our mission and our desire to have people, I'm going to say, normalize the idea of not drinking and what their life looks like after they make that choice to do so. Tell me a little bit about Dry in the Desert and where you're going with it, Ellie.
Yes, correct. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super happy that we connected. Dry in the Desert is kind of exactly what you said and has morphed into a community piece as well as other things that I'll get into, but that is the big focus, is kind of like the lifestyle piece and a lot of what I show of my own personal life and my sobriety is just for that purpose of normalizing not drinking. And whether that looks like sobriety, full sobriety for people or people who are looking to cut back, I think that's where I'm coming from, is just that it was difficult for me to stop drinking ultimately. And at first it was very difficult because I didn't know anyone else who was a drinker and who had stopped drinking. I had my one friend who kind of like guided my way during that time period, but no one else I knew. Everyone I was surrounded with were drinkers or had never been a drinker. So, there's a big difference in that. So it was that scary feeling of feeling like giving something up for good and giving up my fun and all those things that we've all been through and thought of, and afraid to let go of alcohol completely. And I don't think that has to be the case. And I think people can be influenced essentially to believe that their life can be better without alcohol, not even just like still be fun. It's right. Like it can actually be better and more enjoyable, maybe not the same type of fun, but yeah, that's kind of where I sit with it.
I love it. And the funny thing is, you're talking about the normalization of drinking alcohol. We're actually in a space right now that I want to say it's about 80 years ago. If you were the town alcoholic, you were the weird one. Now right. I show up or you show up to an event and you don't drink, like you're looked at in such a way because we've normalized it, because the commercial shows you that it's going to look fun. It's always a pool party. Yeah. What they don't see is the people in the corner passed out the next morning, the guy missing work, the relationship that's broken. That's right. The part we're missing. The commercial doesn't show us that. And oftentimes I think that people get in that space of, I have to drink it, Super Bowl, you were just talking about. Like Super Bowl, how do I participate in a Super Bowl party without drinking? What are some of the things you're doing, with your kind of mission or focus that you think are going to help people get in the space of, it's okay not to pick up drinking today? And I love that you said that it doesn't have to be this long-term decision. I'm going to experience this event tonight. I'm not going to drink. What's that look like for who you're trying to talk to?
Yeah, I think the community piece, like we both harp on, is incredibly important. So I think just having the connection, even if you maybe don't know anyone from one of my events, but following me on Instagram, that's where I do everything. Maybe you see one of my posts, like you're scrolling while you're feeling anxious at the Super Bowl party. A big thing for me was flipping my timeline, my Instagram timeline, to following a lot of those sober people and people who are doing like-minded things, because that just made me feel connected when you might be the only person at the party not drinking. So it can feel difficult, or like you don't have that community support when you are physically the only one in that position. But there are people out there, and I think that's the beautiful thing about like sober Instagram, as they say, and just the internet in general, the phones in general, that you can text somebody. I'll also just reach out via via text when I'm feeling awkward or like when I'm about to walk into a situation that I know might be tempting, and just find that one person that will support you. Like they'll message you back and just be like, you got this. And that goes such a long way, even though you know that, but when someone else, when you can like feel that connection. And then obviously the main like part of my business is selling non-alcoholic beverages. So I think just having something on hand, like we said, essentially the process addiction of drinking, putting something to our mouths and having something, tasting something while we're socializing that feels like an adult beverage and and maybe looks like an adult beverage can be helpful. But even if it is a sparkling water, a soda, even, like not all of us really want to have 3 sodas in a night or like back to back. But I think just preparing yourself, arming yourself with like beverages, because that is a huge piece of it, in my opinion, is that people drink out of social nervousness and anxiety, that they just bring something to their lips and something to do and something to hold and something to do with their hands. Like that can sometimes cause slip ups just because we're unprepared.
Right.
So I think those are the 2 things, you know, from a personal perspective that help me, but also from my business perspective that I like would put out there as advice, I guess.
So on Dry in the Desert, I see you are having parties, you're having events, and you're having a lot of different options. I think when somebody's in early recovery from whatever, putting something else in its place is probably pretty imperative. Like you're saying, people, for example. So I've got my buddies that I call when I want to get after it at a party environment. Like I know who to call. I know who's got drugs. I know who's got the places we can go. I know all of that sort of stuff. Now I need to find somebody that's going to say, ground me, or maybe put me in a space of safety where I feel good about, you know, this event or what we're going to, you know, be taking part in today. I don't have to worry about the fact that I don't have any backup. You know, I like that idea. So as you're talking about that and showing people, hey, you can go there, beverage, you know, let's say something to actually physically drink, which your stuff looks fabulous, by the way. I read through some of them. I mean, they're healthy for me too. Is that right? The way I see
it? A lot of them are. And like there's kind of 2 different routes to go down where you can mimic alcohol and flavor, where people are maybe giving up drinking really for whatever reason, but a lot of people they're being more mindful with drinking, and they want something to taste like beer. They want something to taste like rum. And then there's people who don't want to have alcoholic flavors. That can be very triggering. So it's something to be really mindful of, but there's a lot of drinks that stand on their own as their own flavor. They have functional ingredients in them. So like adaptogens and things like that, ashwagandha, functional mushrooms. So things that might be found in teas or like in ancient Eastern medicine, like things that people have been using for years. So I think there's a couple different things and mixtures of things, as far as like something might just be a wine taste replacement, and maybe that's a little more like kind of just sugary, like juicy flavors. So maybe not the healthiest, but the fact that it doesn't have alcohol in it is healthier than taking an alcoholic drink. But then there's ones that actually shoot for being more of those like clean ingredients and low in sugar, and then have these functional aspects to it. So there's a wide range of if you're just kind of looking to like mimic flavor or have something better for your health, like you said.
Yeah, I like that. Now, no spoiler alert. What's your go-to favorite right now? What are you into? What's the one that Allie's going to be getting if I, you know, see you in that spot?
Yes, I have to say there's a brand called Bon Buzz, and their branding is just so cool. It, you know, it speaks for itself. I'm not a marketing wizard or anything. I won't speak on that. But flavor wise, they make these like canned functional spritz essentially. So they're usually spicy, so I like definitely something with like a kick to it, and they have 50 milligrams caffeine, so it's kind of like my healthier caffeine, my like daytime upper essentially. So I think that would probably be my go-to grab. That's like my typical drink that I'm most likely to have, even though it's like I like everything, but sometimes I just want a little of this, a little of that. That's something that I'm like, I could crush one of those.
Yeah,
probably.
I love that. I love that. I'm a ginger beer guy, so I put ginger beer in almost everything, which I was a mule drinker, so it seemed pretty obvious. And for me, it's not triggering. So it's kind of like I actually found out that I actually drank a lot for taste, right? So I didn't realize.
I think a lot of people do. I mean, we do both.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm sure that it didn't, hurt to have a little vodka in there for me. But when I stopped, I was like, oh, this isn't, again, I don't have to have like, oh, I only can drink water with lemon. Like I can have a drink and again, feel like an adult and be in that event. I love the fact that it's wine. What are some of the wines that are, when you say something tastes like wine, what is that?
Yeah. There's some that are like proxies, and they would be something formulated to taste like wine. So, and then there's the other option is like de-alcoholized wine. So they are actually made fully with alcohol, and then they go through the process of taking the alcohol out. So those, you could argue, might be a little more close in flavor to an alcoholic wine, like for obvious reasons. But yeah, those are good distinctions to know too. I think the non-alcoholic beverage industry is quite young. Even the oldest players have been in for 10, 12 years, but it's really boomed in the last like 4 years, I would say. So I think there's a lot changing all the time as far as to like how they're marketing their beverages. And I think saying those things like de-alcoholized wine or even if it's like a proxy situation is important, because that just empowers people to make the right choice for them if certain people don't want something that contained alcohol at any point, as opposed to something that was more like a sparkling tea, but can be your wine replacement. It's like supposed to act as, your nightly wine down or your like celebratory drink. So there's function as far as like function of ingredients, but then there's like social function as to like what you would use the beverage for. So those are the things I like geek out about, like when you would use it, why you would use it, and then what certain people would want to choose this or not choose this, maybe for religious reasons, maybe for sobriety reasons, that they want something that's purely like never contained alcohol or doesn't taste like alcohol. And I know non-alcoholic beers can be really triggering in flavor. A lot of people say the first time they have one is just like very trippy because it tastes like beer. And when you haven't had one in some time, it's like a very interesting experience. So I'm very cautious about that when people in recovery or who are looking to stop drinking and have like struggled with it, if they approach me or like are interested, I try to really be mindful of that, because that's the space that I come from, that I know exactly. I feel privileged that I know both sides of the story of like people comfortable with the drinks and people not so much.
I think that's cool, and I think that's a self-identity, right? We're talking about, in a lot of what we talk about at Let's Go Recovery, is this journey back to self. As I discover who I am, no matter what the substance that I'm utilizing to do that, I get to know myself a little bit better. So hoping our audience takes the time to really look at that as like, how do I replace or differentiate something in its place? And that can be not just what you're drinking, what you're doing, right? We talked about that, like picking up a new activity. Like if I do this, and this, and obviously, you're talking about a substance, but if activity-wise, I used to do this, we don't necessarily want you to change that. But if it's not healthy for you, if you say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to eat this thing, great. You still need sustenance. You still need to eat. What are you going to eat in its place? I know some friends, gluten has come onto the stage here fairly recently, same timeline, probably 10 years, maybe. People are like, I'm gluten free, now it's on every menu. And it's like not normal. I have a friend who's probably watching this right now and knowing that I'm laughing at her because every time she says like, I need gluten free. And I'm just like, oh yeah, sure you do. Like we're going to that place. But now that it gets normalized, you start to realize, wait a minute, I'm not the only one that struggled with that. I'm not the only one that went home with indigestion. Just like the same person that went home and said, hey, I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
I want to jump into something that I'm hoping hits okay. And well, we haven't, talked about this. Tell me a little bit about Ellie's journey and where she says, hey, alcohol can no longer be part of my life. Tell me this about some of that sort of journey, early journey, where you went, what happened for you?
Sure. Yeah. It's been a long journey. Since 2018, I think, was the first time I was attempting to be done with alcohol and made my first like real go at it. I think I said several times before did the whole never drinking again, and like 2 weeks later, but never really made an attempt to change anything. Just was just going to give it up because of a bad hangover, you know. So in 2018 was my first time actually stepping foot into an AA room, and was definitely impactful. Spent 3 months sober and kind of just dipping my toe in. Like I felt like I was into it, but I didn't start working the steps of the program. And I felt like I had been cured and I could go back out and try to drink alcohol again. And my goal was just always to moderate and for it to just feel better. And it just like never felt better. And so, you know, I was really saved by my couple of pregnancies. When I went back out to drinking again, I found out a couple weeks later I was pregnant. So it was like I got this sober time, not by my own will, but just like it's nice to have that built up time. And so spending that, but I guess I went back to kind of drinking right after my first one. So since I had gone back out, I picked up where I left off, but things were different. I wasn't drinking like I was in college because I was a mom. Yeah. So it didn't seem problematic to me at the time. And then it was like, 14 months into being a mom that I probably told this story before of like at Halloween, my child, his first real Halloween, like where he's walking around, and it was time for him to go. Like we were on a strict bedtime schedule, and I was just so like furious that I couldn't stay there and continue drinking with the rest of my family and kind of like enjoy my night. And so, nothing bad happened. I wasn't too hungover or anything like that the next day, but just in my mind, I was so like ashamed that I prioritized alcohol above just like his needs. And like, it felt kind of silly. So I was ready to give it up again, and then found out I was pregnant again. So it was like an easy way to give it up. But this time afterwards, I was like, I feel like I might drink again, so I need to do something about it. And found myself back in the rooms of AA, and went through the steps, like had that life-changing experience from doing that, where it really got me out of like the processes that I was doing, instead of just saying I'm done with alcohol because it feels bad. It's just like, it's really hard to change that when you're not changing anything else. So this was like me finally addressing issues head on and like just my own self. And I did go back out after that. After 18 months, I was just like still not ready to let it go completely. So I spent a summer like experimenting a little bit, and I actually like was able to moderate a little, but the mental work of doing it was excruciating. And it was like I would try to like sneak in sips, and I was just like, what am I doing? And so at that point I had 18 months sober prior, and luckily I'd had that because I was able to reflect on that and be like, I actually preferred that, and I created like a beautiful life and routine during that time that I chose. I was like, giving it up completely is easier than trying to squeeze it and schedule it into my life and like making it work. So I decided to give it another shot. And so that's where I'm at now, of like 19 months or so in from that last drink. And so yeah, it was like a up and down journey. And I've told that story, told my story in depth in an AA room since then. And I was very nervous about it. And I was just kind of like, maybe they're going to be like, you were able to moderate. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, like, you don't have a problem or whatever, which is like silly. Obviously, I know people wouldn't judge that way in those rooms. But it was like the first person that said something after I shared this story was like, wow, like the chokehold alcohol had on you for you to like keep going back. And I was like, I didn't think of it that way. Like, even though it was less and less, it was like coming back into my life no matter what. I was just like, could not let it go completely. So that's kind of like my like coming to sobriety story. And moving to this, I think the non-alcoholic drinks just became a big tool for me. I think I always use this example of like sharing a beer with my dad. It felt like I could never give that up forever. And that's one of those things and that's why I felt like socially it was so hard. It wasn't just at a party or at a restaurant, but like with the people we love most and enjoy drinking with most, like, how do I do that? And like, that's why the tool of a non-alcoholic beer is like incredible to me, that I can now like have a beer with my dad without ruining my life. And so it's kind of a controversial topic, I know, at least historically in recovery rooms, but now I confidently walk that tightrope of feeling like this is okay for me, and also not like ever bringing it up in recovery rooms, like as far as my business and stuff like that doesn't have to be a tool for everyone, or that's what got me sober. It's like my sobriety and my business are two very different things. They just happen to, my passion for it just happens to like fuel the business. So hopefully that wasn't too long of a story.
First and foremost, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. That's cool that you shared that, the vulnerability of that. And then the eye-opening experience that a lot of people who, I'm going to say, are normies, right? We call them that they think that something tragic has to happen, right? I have to get a DUI, have to get arrested, have to lose all my friends, I have to be in a gutter. I was a guy that had a successful business, a family, house, an okay bank account, and I was broken. And that's what you sounded like to me at Halloween. I know who you were on that Halloween, because I was that guy who didn't want the party to end. We're addicted to more, right? We're addicted to that feeling, right, that you're never going to get. It's so elusive, right? We're chasing, and you're talking about staying extra hours or missing out on something so that alcohol can be part of your life,
and like the thing I value most, where I knew that, like, I value my child the most. So why it was such a confusing experience to be like, why did I in that moment valued alcohol more, because it's an addictive substance that I just want more of. And you're totally right about chasing that feeling. Like, it's just, there is no feeling.
Tell me about today. Tell me about the chase in your life. Okay, your business aside, and how you like react to a social setting, or you're hanging out with your family. We've got holidays coming up where it's like, it'd be pretty normal for people to have, I'm going to go to an event tomorrow where I know a bunch of people are going to be drinking, and they can drink if they want to. If they don't want to fully participate in the rest of their night, that's up to them. And I'm not even judging. I'm saying that's for their choice. But for you, tell me some of what your life looks like now when you realize that absent of alcohol in your life, you can, and you fill in the blank, Ellie.
Yeah. Oh, I can show up just 100%. And my biggest sobriety flex is starting the day over at any point in time. That's what I always say is just my favorite thing. As being a mom, I make a lot of mistakes and do things that I wish I didn't, and parenting's really hard, and I'm able to just stop there in that moment, or the next moment, and repair the mistake and just start over. Like, I just think that's the beauty of not having to sober up in order to do that. And a lot of times when mistakes are fueled by alcohol, or alcohol is an underlying part of it, we have shame around that, and then we don't want to repair because we don't want to even bring it up. So I think that's just like the best gift sobriety has given me, is that I'm like, if I made a mistake, it was like a wholehearted mistake, or I can come right back and and fix it and start over and like continue on my path instead of having to go down deeper in the gutter. So
Just have another one, right? Just have another one.
yeah, like let's just forget that
Right.
happened and move on, or trying to shift blame. And like that's the biggest thing for me was, because it was just so emotionally hard and not so much of physical consequences, just emotional consequences and turmoil all the time. So like that's my best thing that I get from sobriety. As far as socially, I'm very confident going out now and like happy that I just don't have to think about drinking alcohol, and that I can drive home, and like that I can be only in places I actually want to be at. I think that's a big piece of what I preach too, of just like do things that you actually enjoy and not. I definitely used to go places because there was like a promise of alcohol and not necessarily that I wanted to be there. So, and I'm like, I understand that the whole like
allure.
Beer festivals where it's like the only reason you're there is to drink beer. I'm like, I used to be there. So I get it. But now I'm like, for someone like me that has no appeal or things like that, where it's just like centered around alcohol, I don't need to be there. It's different when you're working in a corporate setting or somewhere where you have to be for business, or even that you want to be and there's still alcohol involved. I just think it took me time to get to a place of feeling like very comfortable ordering my club soda or even a Coca-Cola. And I think the last thing I would say is just something I've kind of touched on Instagram, and I'll quote my friend Sam Bale, who owns a pop-up sober bar in New York, and she just talks about medium fun, and I call it like mediocre fun, but I just think like not everything has to be the most fun. And I think that was a hard thing with family events, holidays and whatnot, of just feeling like, man, that wasn't that great. And your mind might immediately jump to be like, because everyone else is drinking and I wasn't. But it's also just like, maybe it's just like,
it was never going to be that
medium.
great.
Like, I don't know. It's like not everything has to be like the best time. And I think once we accept that, then we're like, okay, then you make that choice to go to the family thing because you're like, I love my family, even if like there is little arguments or we're not having the best time. Like, I'm here for that reason. And you can kind of look past the like little things that you're like, oh, that part kind of sucked, or this bothered me. Like, you have the bigger purpose of why you're even somewhere, rather than like being there and feeling like I'm just missing out or I'm left out. Those things, those are the stuff that I've recently kind of like worked through, and just feels better to accept. That like not everything is
Amazing.
The best time of your life, and that's like for the best, probably.
The funny thing is, you start talking about like an event, and I'm going to say a holiday party. Let's say you're there for 3 to 4 hours. If you're there 3 to 4 hours and you're getting smashed, everybody's getting smashed, you're like takeaways from that. And we can throw business in that. Any setting where you're there for 4 hours and part of that time is just consumed by alcohol, right? I'm going to say that's either the mind, your presence, whatever you don't want to call that. But when you start looking at like, hey, what was that event like? Everybody's knee-jerk reaction will be like, oh, that was so fun. Well, because it was loud, it was at a bar, and there was stuff going on. But if you actually put somebody to the carpet and said, hey, what made yesterday fun? They're probably going to struggle. Like, they're probably going to go, oh, that was awful. But I can tell you in my own life, like my daughters and I are taking pictures that I cherish. Like, we're having conversations, holy cow, that are meaningful. I want to be there. Like, you couldn't talk me into a drink. We're getting ready to go to a Diamondbacks game. Season's kicking off, and one of my daughters wants to get tickets. And for me, I'm like, oh, kind of bored or whatever. But like you say, I get to go there. I know I was the guy that was drinking at the game, barely knew there was baseball going on, and yet you're like, oh, like, we're doing it. We're doing that thing. And to me, I'm just going to say it for myself, it's no longer appealing. I want to be there. And that's fully. That's just not my body. That's my mind. What are you saying? And then, of course, that leads you, I'm sure, and I'm going to get into this idea of expanding your network of friends that you're supporting, maybe alcoholically. Like we say, okay, don't drink, and then, you'll be more present, you'll be more aware. But you also can be a better friend because I hear you. I see you. I know that you're hurting. Let's talk about that. Tell me some of those experiences that maybe you've had the opportunity to be part of that you go, had alcohol been part of my life, I miss.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the other thing I say is the best part, the most improved part maybe of me from getting sober is my capacity for life. So that goes for all things, but I think for my relationships is the most impactful maybe, and just feels the best for me. And that just means that I have space and energy and room in my heart for more people. And like you said, of just paying attention. There's things like when someone isn't feeling well, I'll bring them soup. And it's like, that's not a huge deal, but I just would never do those things. I was a little more selfish when drinking, and not in a way of like mine, but just like only thinking about myself. And I just didn't have the capacity to help anyone else. And I still have limited capacity now because I'm a parent and own a business and stuff like that. And it's like, I still find the time to do those things. I think everyone has their certain love language or how they provide support and whatnot for people. And I think that's the best example that I come up with, is just kind of like either checking on someone when they've said something is happening, or bringing them something to try to make their life easier. And I just never much considered those things before getting sober. So I would say just the capacity for relationships and better relationships, and like considering people. It sounds so simple, or like that I was a bad person before, but I think you know the difference when you know yourself, where maybe it doesn't look too much different from people on the outside, but the fact that I'm thinking about people in my head is a noticeable difference for me.
We use the language wasted. Like, we're going to get wasted. You talk to somebody and they're saying like, what are you doing this weekend? We're going to go to this thing and we're going to get wasted. Well, what you're wasting is time for sure, money for sure, but you're wasting opportunities for love, opportunities for relationship, opportunities for beauty. That's what you're wasting. If you're going to a beach, right, and I'm going to, go to a foreign place, let's say, and I'm going to take it in. If I'm consumed by alcohol, right, or under the influence of drugs or alcohol, I'm going to miss the beauty of that place. So I'm wasting my chance to see something amazing. I tell people there's so many times in my life today where I get to see something, hear something, do something that would never, ever been possible. I just would have missed it. And that can be, I'm hungover in the corner laying under the table, or I don't feel good, or, somebody's kind of like drawing me close and I'm rejecting it because I'm selfish, right? You talked about the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the book talks about it: self-centered, self-seeking, self-driven. That's the sort of behavior. Now that you're out of self, you get to help your friends out. Are you thinking people are experiencing life differently? So Ellie makes this change. She puts it out there just like Tracy did, and I said, "Hey, man, this is a journey I'm going to go on. It's not for everybody, right?" And I'm sitting here telling the audience right now, if this is a choice they want to make, certainly do it. We're going to try to give them the support and make some healthy changes in their life. But I don't have to tell everybody to do that. But when I do, it's organic. One of my good friends said my favorite thing that he said about me, that maybe anybody said about me since I stopped drinking, is you're contagious. He said, now nobody wants to drink. Like, I was the contagious guy that's like, let's go to let's do it, right? Because Tracy's going to be go. what are some of the things you're experiencing where not just, the people that are coming along and the experiences you're having, but how are you seeing it impact like I'm going to say the lives around you, maybe your children, maybe your significant other, maybe people like that, where they go, man, I get my mom back. How does that look for you?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think I've definitely influenced anyone around me to consider their relationships with alcohol. I've had a lot of people reach out that now they're aware of such and such, or they stopped drinking, or like I had a friend say their dad stopped drinking just after hearing about my business, and kind of thought to himself, like, what is the point? Like, and he's in his 60s probably. So it's like just affecting people to think about it is important to me. And I think monumental in itself, as far as how I'm different, or that a change people see in me and have laid out. I don't know if there's much that anyone has called out and said to me. I think real close people, like even my mom, has just noticed that I operate on a different level of happiness, I want to say. Not always the like most bubbly person, but I think just those people who know me really well without having me to say anything or like know really what's going on. I think someone like her can tell that like how much of a difference sobriety has made in my life, even though, like I said, it's just like the actions and like the things I'm doing on the outside might not look that different. So I think it takes being like a pretty close person in my circle to really see that like Ellie feels different, not just like, oh, she's like able to do this and that and the other, but just that like she's happier, she's more confident, those things that I struggled with because I just maybe just wasn't happy with life. And I think it goes back to that kind of like chasing the dream that like was never there, chasing the feeling that I could never accomplish. And it's something I still work on and struggle with, of like filling the hole that we talk about of like with really only like self-love or God's love or like whatever people want to believe in, that it can't come from other people and it's not going to come from drugs and alcohol. And I think that's like my lifelong pursuit.
Sure.
But it's gotten a lot easier, and I think that's what people close to me can tell about me, whether they like are saying those things to me or not.
I like the idea of pursuit or journey, like that you're continuing to pursue. Hopefully your life looks different, and if that, I'm going to use the word better, right? We'll say that it gets better. It gets more accessible, I think would be the thing I would say. Like if I don't drink today, I could be more accessible to my life, my joy,
Yes.
my feelings even, so I didn't feel 4 years ago. Like I just didn't feel like, and that could be good, bad, or indifferent. I didn't have any certain, I'm going to say, what's the word where like you just kind of know that right? Like it just kind of exists.
Intuition.
Like all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that feels good. I didn't know that it was going to feel good, or it can feel bad. Like, and I can sit there and go, man, I don't like the way that sounds. I don't like the way that made me feel. And I do something about it today, right? Like I'm going to say, reinvestigate what that feeling was later on and go, what am I going to do different about that next time? Who do I have to remove from my circle that may be influencing that feeling? I'm going to give you this time, a little bit of time here on the show before we wrap up. Give me your business, the operation. How can we support it as a community? I know a lot of my followers and listeners are going to go and subscribe to Dry in the Desert. Obviously on Instagram, I think it's your biggest platform.
Yeah.
But tell me some of the things that we can do, support, and the things you want to hopefully move forward with your organization.
Yeah, so I'm looking to, so like I said, Dry in the Desert is essentially an online non-alcoholic bottle shop. So I service the Phoenix area and surrounding suburbs. We do weekly drop-off, like pickup or delivery options. So you can get your beverages by the weekend. So if people are interested in doing that, of course, go online. It's just dryinthedesert.com. And you can place an order. It can either be delivered to you or picked up in Central Phoenix. And I think as far as support, like just sharing and following along the journey is great. I think especially if you're interested in it, it's just nice, again, to see that normalization of socially not drinking, of learning about new beverages, and me diving into the educational piece of those so that you do feel empowered to choose something that works for you. I'm always open to like servicing, kind of like a bartending mocktail service at corporate events or like private events. So if you know people or somewhere where you work and you want to have this offered when they're only offering alcohol, like I think that's the movement I'm going after, is that non-alcoholic beverages have an equal seat at the table with alcohol in those social spaces. So if there's anywhere you want to see more NA-friendly drinks, definitely reach out or give my contact to those people. So
I'm so grateful we got to meet you. I can already see certain places where I need you to be, like if we say open bar and they go over there and there's just like ginger and great drinks.
Coke.
That, like, all sort of like open bar. They're like, wait a minute, I wanted that. Like, yeah, we don't do that here. That becomes more normal. That'll be great.
Yeah, I think especially in like the last thing, and just there's certain situations where like alcohol also isn't appropriate, even if it's okay to have there, like in a daytime event, in corporate office, middle of the day, like you could have a mocktail bar, and that's still something adult, sophisticated, interesting that you can provide your employees or your guests without jeopardizing, and for like safety reasons, for all sorts of reasons. So I think thinking about those things into like what makes sense for this event, it's not that just like, oh, you shouldn't have alcohol anywhere because it's bad. It's just like make it make sense, and make people feel safe and included is important.
Well, thank you for being here. If you're hoping to make a change in your life, follow Dry in the Desert. You can look up Ellie online and certainly want to be part of her journey. But also I want you to know that there are choices. There are opportunities in life that you'll never get back just because alcohol was part of it. Maybe squashed a feeling, took away just how you wanted to react with yourself. I'm encouraging you today to don't do that behavior. Don't drink that drink. Don't put that substance in your body, and we'll be here for you again next time. I hope you heard something today that gets you to take one small step into the version of the person that you want to be. For more content like this, subscribe to our channel below, or you can go on letsgorecovery.org. Until next time,